Crude oil, or oil in its raw form, is a fossil fuel. It is the product of organic matter transforming into hydrocarbons over the course of millions of years. Crude oil usually exists in underground deposits, but sometimes it appears on the surface of the earth. That is why humanity has known about it since ancient times. Oil was used around the world as a construction material and also for medical purposes. However, a sharp increase in its use occurred only in the 19th century. During the height of the Industrial Revolution in Europe and America, energy needs grew rapidly, and these needs were met primarily by coal. Interest in oil increased across the world. First in the Russian Empire, and later in Europe and North America, modern oil wells appeared. In the United States, this created a genuine oil rush. The country quickly became the world's largest oil producer. At first, distilled oil replaced whale oil as fuel for lamps. It possessed greater specific heat of combustion than coal and was more convenient to transport than gas. In the early 20th century, oil consumption increased especially rapidly in transportation due to the rise of automobiles, the conversion of ship engines, and the aviation boom during the First World War. After extraction from underground, crude oil undergoes fractional distillation to separate useful hydrocarbons. The lightest molecules concentrate at the top of the distillation column, where the temperature is approximately 20 degrees Celsius. Here, liquefied petroleum gas is collected, which is used, among other things, in lighters and kitchen stoves. In the range between 30 and 105 degrees Celsius, automobile gasoline is produced. Between 105 and 160 degrees, ligroin is formed. It is used in the oil industry to create plastics, synthetic fibers, medical preparations, and cosmetics. Between 160 and 230 degrees Celsius, kerosene is obtained, the main fuel for aviation. Between 230 and 425 degrees Celsius, diesel fuel for automobiles and heating fuel for household needs is produced. Finally, a dense, high-sulfur residue is heated to above 450 degrees Celsius in order to obtain heavy fuel used on ships and also bitumen used in road construction and roofing materials. Originally, crude oil was transported in barrels with a capacity of 42 American gallons. That is, slightly less than 159 liters. Therefore, the barrel became the standard unit for determining oil prices. Over time, more and more oil fields were discovered worldwide, including in Venezuela, which became the second largest oil-producing country in the world. In the Middle East, which was controlled by Britain, Western companies took over the new market, giving part of their profits to local states as payment for access to resources. During the Second World War, the demand for oil grew rapidly, and control over oil resources became a matter of international significance. After the war, the United States signed an agreement with Saudi Arabia, becoming the guarantor of its security in exchange for access to its oil. Western oil corporations, dominating the markets, fueled nationalist movements in oil-producing countries. Saudi Arabia signed an agreement allowing it to receive half of the revenue from its own oil. In Iran, negotiations with the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company reached a dead end. The Prime Minister nationalized the oil industry. In response, the United States and the United Kingdom secretly organized a coup d'état to overthrow the Prime Minister. The Shah remained in power and allowed a consortium of Western companies to continue using Iranian oil. In the Soviet Union, the discovery of oil fields in western Siberia pushed the state to invest heavily in oil extraction. Oil, which was abundant and cheap to produce, displaced coal and became the world's main source of energy. But its price still did not exceed $3 per barrel. The 5 largest oil suppliers formed OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. They sought to resist the dominance of Western companies, raise prices, and create a unified oil policy. Over time, new countries joined the organization. In the year 1972, the United States reached its maximum level of domestic oil production and was forced to import oil to meet growing demand. When the United Kingdom withdrew from the Middle East, regional security began to be ensured by Iran and Saudi Arabia, which had received weapons from Western states. After the Yom Kippur War between Israel and the Arab states of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, OPEC used oil as a political weapon for the first time, imposing an embargo on Israel's allies and reducing production to raise prices. This caused the first oil crisis. Industrial nations, whose economies now depended on oil, attempted to reduce consumption and invested in alternative energy sources, nuclear power plants, hydroelectric stations, and coal. Oil companies, searching for new deposits, began active development of offshore fields, especially in the North Sea. The Soviet Union became the world's largest oil supplier. In the United States, production grew due to new development in Alaska. In the year 1979, a revolution occurred in Iran. The Shah's regime was overthrown, and an Islamic Republic was established, taking an anti-Western stance. Oil production dropped, triggering the second oil crisis. Territorial disputes between Iran and Iraq led to an 8-year war. Global oil production by countries outside OPEC grew and exceeded the organization's output, so oil prices began to be shaped not by the cartel but by global supply and demand. During the Iran-Iraq War, both states carried out attacks on each other's oil infrastructure. To ensure the safety of shipments, hundreds of warships entered the Persian Gulf. As a result of the war, Iraq was left weakened and burdened with debt to Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, but still possessing significant military strength. This motivated Iraq to invade Kuwait. An international coalition led by the United States was formed to intervene and neutralize Iraq's army. The United States imposed embargoes on Iran and Iraq. Saudi Arabia sought to regain its leadership in oil production. Having the world's largest proven reserves, it increased output and saturated the market, again becoming the main supplier. In Russia, new investments revived the oil industry, but because of low prices and high extraction costs on offshore fields, companies faced enormous difficulties. In 1998, large-scale mergers began, creating the 6th largest oil corporations in the world. The military presence of the United States in the Middle East caused growing concern. Radical Islamists opposed the presence of an ally of Israel in the region, and part of the population viewed sanctions against Iran and Iraq as excessively severe. On September 11, 2001, the United States suffered a major terrorist attack. 15 of the 19 attackers were Saudis, which increased tensions. The United States began searching for alternative oil sources to reduce dependence on Saudi Arabia. After the discovery of major oil fields in the Gulf of Guinea, oil production in Africa grew rapidly. The United States invaded Iraq under the pretext of weapons of mass destruction, and after several years Iraqi oil returned to the global market. Iran opened its market to new Asian consumers, China and India. High volumes of oil deliveries stimulated global economic growth, especially in developing nations. Oil speculation on Wall Street pushed prices even higher. However, the financial crisis of 2008 caused a sharp drop in oil prices. In the following years, it was discovered that Venezuela possessed the world's largest proven oil reserves, even larger than those of Saudi Arabia. Rising global demand once again increased prices. Unconventional extraction methods became profitable despite high costs. In Canada and Venezuela, oil sands were actively developed, forests were cut down, and oil-bearing rock was processed using expensive and environmentally damaging technologies. The share of offshore production fell to about 1/3 of global output, and companies were forced to drill ever deeper. An attempt to drill an ultra-deep offshore well in the Gulf of Mexico led to the largest oil spill in the history of the United States. In the United States, technologies such as hydraulic fracturing made it possible to extract shale oil trapped between layers of hard rock. Under high pressure, fluid was injected to create fractures and release the oil. Many such fields were discovered across the country, causing a rapid rise in American oil production. The fact that the world's largest oil consumer had become one of its largest producers displeased its ally, Saudi Arabia. To make unconventional extraction profitable, Saudi Arabia increased production and saturated the market, causing oil prices to fall sharply. However, the American oil industry survived and continued to grow. Consumption of cheap and accessible oil increased and approached roughly 100 million barrels per day. 2/3 of this volume was used in the transportation sector, which became the main source of carbon dioxide emissions. In maritime transportation, heavy fuel oil was used, emitting thousands of times more sulfur than diesel. The United States and Europe responded by creating zones where heavy fuel was banned. Since the beginning of the oil era, oil spills have caused severe environmental damage. The most affected region is the Niger Delta, where spills were ignored for decades. Saudi Arabia, faced with a budget deficit, reformed its internal policies. OPEC countries were forced to coordinate production with other states, including Russia, the world's second-largest oil exporter. The United States continued extraction in order to keep prices low and stimulate its own economic growth. As a result, it became the world's largest oil-producing state. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warned that carbon dioxide emissions must be radically reduced to stop global warming. Current oil reserves will last at least another half-century at existing levels of consumption. Saudi Arabia began diversifying its economy in preparation for the post-oil era. Iran, possessing the world's third-largest oil reserves, has been under renewed United States sanctions since 2018, aimed at strangling its oil trade. Venezuela suffered from low oil prices and gained no benefit from its enormous reserves. Political instability could severely affect its exports, which would benefit Russia and China. Oil companies remain among the most influential corporations in the world. In the year 2017, 5 of them were ranked among the 10 largest by cash turnover. The International Maritime Organization set a goal to significantly reduce sulfur emissions from ships by the year 2020. This may force the industry to abandon heavy fuel in favor of other hydrocarbons, raising their demand and prices.